This young boy was having a challenging day, but when he saw an elderly lady board the bus with no available seats, he didn't think twice. Without hesitation, he offered her his seat, unaware of the profound impact his gesture would have. Gratefully accepting his offer, the elderly lady then discreetly handed him something that would alter the course of his life. Gabby's riding the bus home after having another bad day. He seemed to be having those a lot lately and didn't understand why. Deep in his thoughts, he didn't notice the bus slowly filling up with people. He was eventually pulled from his thoughts when he saw something he couldn't wrap his head around. At one point, the bus had become full and no more seats were available. At that moment, an elderly lady, to Gabby's surprise, no one felt the need to get up and offer his or her seat to the older woman. He shook his head in disbelief and took action. Even though he was having a bad day and just wanted to go home and be alone, it didn't mean he had lost his manners. Gabby got the woman's attention at the next stop and asked if she wanted to sit. He could not have anticipated the impact this moment would have on his life. When the woman turned around to see who had offered her a seat, she was surprised to see it was a young man. In her mind, the youth were too busy with their phones nowadays to know what was happening around them. She smiled at him and gladly accepted his offer, giving up his seat and made him realize how crowded the bus really was. It looked like the whole city had decided to take the same bus to the exact location as him. He was mentally preparing himself for the moment he had to make his way through the crowd, because moving was hard for him. He was already glad to say he managed to get the bus to stop at the right time, but now the real challenge had come. Gabby pushed and pulled through the crowd, struggling to get off. He didn't notice that he passed the old lady on his way until he suddenly felt something. With difficulty, he managed to turn his head around and look at what he had felt. At that moment, he noticed the old lady had put something in his jacket pocket. He wanted to ask her what she was doing, but the bus was so crowded, he couldn't reach her and was pushed out. Gabby watched the bus drive away, thinking about what had just happened. He put his hand inside his jacket pocket and was surprised to feel something like a piece of paper. Did the old lady give me money as a thank you? But when he pulled it out, he saw it wasn't money at all. It was a tiny piece of paper with some code scribbled on it. It looked like the older woman had written it hastily. While on the bus, 659-724, the note said. He was baffled by this apparently useless piece of paper, but then he noticed something. Was he too quick to judge? Shining through from the other side was another message. Gabby quickly turned around the note and read the second message. Visit Lakeshore Drive 602 at 8 o'clock. It said he didn't recognize the address. What is this? Why did she give this to him? The questions flew through his mind. Gabby looked at his watch. He had 2 hours before it was 8 o'clock. What should he do? When he looked up the address, he noticed there was a restaurant nearby. He made up his mind and decided to get something to eat while trying to determine what to do. After he entered the restaurant, he ordered dinner and ate it. Gabby thought about the possibilities. What would the older lady want from him? Could he trust her? Was it a trap? He simply did not know the answer. Ultimately, his curiosity got the better of him. He needed to know what this was about. While making his way toward the address, Gabby kept checking his watch. It was almost 8 o'clock. But he should be able to make it in time as it was just around the corner. A slight shiver went through his body. Was he really doing this? Not knowing his life was about to change, the address turned out to lead him to an apartment building. When he went up the steps, he was met by a closed door. He searched for a doorbell, but after a while, he saw they were inside the hallway. What now? He double-checked the note and remembered the code. There was a little copad on the side of the door, and he entered 659-724, after which the door beeped and opened. He looked at the signs and saw apartment 602 was on the 6th floor. After climbing the stairs, he arrived at the door and knocked, not knowing what to expect. Gabby heard some rummaging coming from the other side of the door. It took some time, but then he heard light footsteps approaching him, and the door opened. The older lady stood in the doorway and smiled when she saw who had knocked. She invited Gabby in, who hesitated momentarily, but eventually followed her inside. Gabby's head all this time, and he couldn't wait to ask it. Why did you hand me this note? The older woman hadn't even handed him his tea yet. She smiled at him, thought about it for a while, then started talking, baffling Gabby. The lady started her story by telling how she overheard him talking on the bus. Gabby had been on the phone on the bus, and the old woman secretly listened in. The calls were a sensitive topic as they were the reason his days had been going so bad lately. He felt some anger coming up. The older woman hadn't noticed it bothered Gabby as she continued her story. She felt sorry for him because she overheard that he hadn't gotten the job he had been hoping to get, which caused him many problems, because to her surprise, that wasn't the only thing that was causing his bad day. He had been talking on the phone with his dad. Gabby's mother had suddenly fallen ill and needed expensive medicine he couldn't pay for. He had been trying to get his father to help them, but since the divorce, his dad had cut all contact and wanted nothing to do with them. Until now. The lady had been talking about his life and problems without Gabby saying anything. It frustrated him. She meddled with his life. Why do you care? Why are you eavesdropping on my life? He asked abruptly. He immediately felt sorry and looked at the older woman, but to his surprise, she smiled softly. I understand you feel that way. I'm sorry, she said. It looked like she just realized. It just occurred to her she hadn't introduced herself, which she immediately did. I'm Lynn and I care because I've been looking for someone. Gabby's frustration was replaced by confusion. Looking for someone? What does she mean? It was as if Lynn knew what was happening inside his mind because she started to explain immediately. As it turned out, Lynn had been alone for a long time and had little to no contact with other people. Now that she was getting older, that caused a problem she was trying to fix. As Lynn was talking, Gabby started to question where this was going. Could it be? Only a little later, he got the confirmation of his thought. I've been looking for the right person to put in my will, she said, and I think you are that person. These words came as a shock to him. Gabby didn't know what to say or how to react. Was this woman serious? Why him? What was going on? It took a while for him to get his head on straight, but he eventually managed to ask one of the questions that had popped up in his head. Why me? It looked like Lynn had hoped he would have asked that question as she moved a little closer to him. She explained to him that she had been looking for someone who understood her, was kind of heart, and was just a nice person. She grabbed his hand, and that's you. Without giving him a moment to let it all sink in, Lynn continued explaining that she couldn't wait to start sharing and helping him. She offered to pay for his mother's medicine, or just give him money. Gabby felt overwhelmed by all this news and her offer, but knew deep down what to do. Despite how great this opportunity was, he knew he could never accept this. It didn't feel right to receive something so big and life-changing from someone he didn't know with pain in his heart. He declined her offer. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I don't think I'm the right person. Did he do the right thing? Gabby couldn't look at her. He felt it would be too awkward. Then Lynn responded, well, I can't force you. He looked up and saw a thoughtful look on her face, which suddenly disappeared. He could have never expected what she was going to say next. He was kind of relieved when Lynn said she had a different idea. Although he had declined the offer, it was still life-changing, and he wasn't sure if he made the correct decision. What if I give you a task, and when you complete it, you get rewarded? Gabby was surprised by this idea. It was hard to decline her plan. Gabby refused her first offer, but that took a lot of willpower, or the more he thought about it, the more acceptable it became. With this plan, it was like he was working and getting a salary, but what did he have to do? Before he knew it, they were discussing the plan further. Had he really just accepted a life-changing thing from a stranger? What would he have to do to get it? Lynn still hadn't answered that question, and he became a little nervous. Suddenly, she had it making Gabby feel nervous all over again. Her idea wasn't what he'd expected at all. You have to prove who you are. You have to prove your kind of heart. She said. Gabby thought about this for a while and then realized he himself had to think of something to prove himself to Lynn. She seemed very happy with her idea. What he didn't realize, however, was why Lynn was so happy in the first place. She thought about this plan to make Gabby believe in himself. She hoped that by completing the task, he felt he was the right person for her inheritance and would accept it and let her help him. Gabby was happy he had found an honest way to be able to pay for his mother's medicine, but still didn't know how to get it. However, he wasn't planning on staying idle and hoping Lynn would just give it to him. He could think of something that would work, right? He thought hard, but nothing helpful popped up. Gabby looked at Lynn for help, but she had just told him he had to complete the task independently, and he sighed. She wouldn't be helping him, but that was okay. He was the one who wanted to earn it fair and square. Anyway, it was time for him to leave, but they agreed to keep in touch. Gabby made his way down the stairs with confidence. This was an opportunity he had been waiting for his entire life. He only needed to think of something that would prove to Lynn he was the right person. He decided to walk his way home, thinking the fresh air would help him think of something. He was deliberating in his head on the right way to approach this task. Then suddenly, it got to him. He had to go back to the beginning, where it had all started. What was the original reason Lynn had picked Gabby as the right person? He had offered her his seat, even though he was having a rough day. He acted out of kindness and free will. That was what he needed to do. It didn't take him long to think of something to prove himself. The following day, Gabby got up early and went toward Lynn. The night before, he had already notified her that he would come by. He hadn't told her what they would do, so he was welcomed with many questions when he entered her apartment, but he wasn't planning on ruining the surprise. When Lynn was ready to go, he helped her down the stairs and took her with him. They didn't have to walk far and eventually arrived at their destination. It was a retirement home. Gabby saw the look on her face and calmed her down. "I'm not putting you here, don't worry." After they went inside, Gabby sat Lynn on a chair and walked to the counter. "I called yesterday." The woman behind the counter welcomed him and started to explain. When he got everything ready, he returned to Lynn and asked her to follow him. Gabby thought she would love what he had planned. Moments later, they entered the common room of the retirement home. It was filled with elderly people eating, playing games, or conversing. Maxton smiled at Lynn as he grabbed a deck of cards. While dealing, he asked multiple people if they wanted to join them. Lynn couldn't believe her eyes. Gabby came to the retirement home to volunteer, but he also thought it was a perfect way for Lynn to be in contact with people again. He stayed for a long time playing games, making jokes, and talking with the people. He didn't even notice Lynn talking to the employees. It could have been hours before Gabby remembered why he was at the retirement home in the first place: the task. He looked for Lynn, who was in deep conversation with someone. She looked happy, which made Gabby happy in return, but before he could talk to her, he felt a hand on his shoulder. When he turned around to see who the hand belonged to, Gabby was surprised to see a middle-aged man in a suit. The man pulled him aside and introduced himself. It was the manager of the retirement home. The manager had heard great things and wanted to offer Gabby a job. Gabby was beside himself with joy and accepted without hesitation. This was all he ever wanted: a steady job to care for his mom. He couldn't wait to tell Lynn. When he told her, she wasn't surprised at all. "I told you, you were the right person," she said with a wide smile. This was the moment he realized this was her plan all along. However, it worked out even better than she had anticipated. Gabby thanked her from the bottom of his heart and told her he didn't need her inheritance or help now that he had secured a job. But he wanted to stay in touch. Eventually, Lynn moved into the retirement home. They had a strong relationship, but unfortunately, Lynn passed away after a few years. Gabby organized the funeral and was surprised to find out that she had kept her promise after all these years. As her final thank you, she had written her will in his name. I'm eager to hear what you think about this story, so please feel free to leave your thoughts and insights in the comments section below. If you found this video engaging and enjoyable, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel for more content like this and share it with your friends and family to spread the joy. Take care of yourselves, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you all again in our upcoming videos.